My name is Kyle Spears, and this is a video that I have been meaning to make for quite some time. I've had a lot of people reach out and just ask, so what kind of camera do you use? And what kind of microphone and audio setup? And what's your editing suite and so forth that you use? And I'm finally making a video rather than having a thousand conversations about how I do it. Even right now, I am filming on Zoom. Like literally, this is going straight out of my camera to Zoom, and I'm not going to do any color editing, no color grading, nothing. What you see is what you got. And I got two cameras. I have a more expensive camera and I have a less expensive camera. This is literally on the less expensive camera because I would like for everyone to be able to very simply be able to have the image that you want without a ton of money. So that's what today's video is about. Hopefully it helps. All right, first and foremost, when it comes to this whole idea of like how to set up and all of that, the first thing I think a lot of people do is they don't create separation between themselves and their background. And it's important for a couple reasons. Number one, you need to separate yourself from your background so you don't overblend into your background. The other thing is you'll never get that shallow depth of field. You know how everyone's looking for that blurry background? I have a lot of people who want to know, how do you get the blurry background? Well, you have to create some separation between you and your background. Otherwise, you can't you can't you can't get that look. So create some separation between you and your background, and it'll help towards that end. So my next motto is this, is it's all about lighting. Lenses and lighting is kind of my motto, but I would say lighting is the most important thing. The reason why I say this is because you have a computer camera or even a webcam, you can make yourself look better just by changing your lighting. Literally, with no more money, really, you just grab some lighting in your house and it will improve. Now, when it comes to lighting, there's really a few key steps that I would say that it's important to master. First and foremost is this idea of 3-point lighting. So you have what's called a key light. That's what lights you up. Then you have a hair light. I actually don't have one right now on me, but you have a hair light and that separates you between you and your background. And then you have practical lighting. Practical lighting is anything that you have really going on in your environment in the background. When it comes to key lighting, there's a couple key things that I would say are important. One of which is you want a large light source. I know some people are thinking it might just be better to have something that's kind of small. You see those little glow lights or glow whatever they are, and they're kind of small with the ring or whatever. I personally don't use that because I use a large light dome. Sometimes I do what's called book lighting. Book lighting is a really great cheap option as well. But right now, my light dome is about 36 inches across. I have a grid on it. Grid's important because it controls what we call spill. So it's not washing out what's going on my bookshelf, and it washes out the effect going on in the practical lighting. So you really want to control what's going on with your key light, and you want it to be as close to you as possible. The other thing you're going to want is diffusion. Diffusion creates what we would call soft lighting. Soft lighting, it kind of rolls across your face. It's more flattering, and overall it just looks better. And so you don't want a hard light that creates a ton of shadows and so forth. You really want something that's more soft. So you want a big light source, you want it to be pretty close to you, and you want it to be decently powerful, just depending on what you're dealing with. The other thing is that if you're going to do a hair light, it's important that it has barn doors on it. The reason why that's important is you want to control the direction of the light. When it comes to practicals, same thing. You want to have control. I can dim everything. I can control how much output is coming out of those lights. And, I get a lot of people who are wondering how I did my bookshelf. Literally, all I did is I took all the books off and I just put these little puck lights in the back, and I had to wire them in, just kind of drill through the back of it. And I did that for each one of those shelves. And then you turn it on, you turn it off, and it turned out fairly well. Again, when it comes to lighting, you're taking a two-dimensional image that's reflective of three-dimensional space. So what it really comes down to is you control how the shadows work. So if you look at my face right now, this side of my face is darker than this side. Again, it's about depth. And this is a big thing when it comes to videography, film, photography, is you want to create depth. And the way you do that is by creating shadows and controlling shadows effectively. In my room right now, it's kind of challenging because my room, it's pretty small, but it has a ton of windows. I have 6 windows in this room. So I have this material that I use to cover my windows. Otherwise, the light coming in washes out everything on my bookshelf. And so it's very important that when you're in your space, you what's called flag it, or you just control the lighting where you are to create the effect that you're trying to create. You know, the basics really don't change. I'll take an example. I recently started collaborating with disciples today. This is an incredible opportunity I'm able to have, but I'm going to be doing videos where we take trauma and theology, and we're going to be taking people of faith who have testimonies of overcoming trauma. And we're going to be doing a little bit more artistic, documentary style type stuff. But even in the one that I just did, which will be airing very soon, if not already out, with a woman named Janelle, the basics don't change. Consistently, when it comes to lighting, if you understand how it works, you can always make it work for you. So understand when it comes to lighting, control your lighting. The one quick thing that I would say when it comes to lighting, there's these little light bulbs at Home Depot that you can get for 12 or 13 bucks. And they allow you to control the temperature, the color, how bright or dim they are. I would highly suggest, I can't tell you how many of those bulbs that I have bought, and it allows me to control the lighting wherever I am filming. Second is lens. Lens is super important. On my entry-level camera that I'm filming on right now, the lens that I have is actually a little more expensive than the camera itself. The lens is so important because it is what creates the image and the effect that you're going for. One of the things, so this camera that I'm on right now with this lens, the lens is a Sigma 18 to 35 1.8 aperture, and the aperture has to do with how much light it lets in. This is very, very important. And the more light it lets in, the blurrier the background. Everyone's looking for that blurry bokeh look. You got to have a lens that lets enough light in so it'll grab you and it'll blur everything else out. And that's probably the biggest thing people want to know is how in the world do you create that look? Well, it comes down to the lens more than the camera. It's very important that you have a lens that is that's capable of performing in those conditions. The focal length, I would suggest, like, so right now I think I'm at like 30 millimeters. You know, it kind of just depends. If I have a little bit more room, I can go all the way to 35, but you want something that's going to allow you to adjust, especially if you're in tight spaces like this. You're going to want something that is probably more, I don't know, 20 to 24. If you have more space, 30, sometimes even 50. I mean, that's really going to blur quite a bit out, but I would say really that 20 to 30 range is worked out really well for me. Now, here's one trade secret I wish more people would be willing to talk about, and it's filters. When it comes to the image, there are going to be filters that help with certain effects. So for instance, I have a black Pro Mist 1/4 on right now on this camera. And what it does is it helps with what we call the blooms. So like in the lights in the background, it has a little bit of a subtle blooming effect. Also, what it can do is it can create even more of a flattering look across your subject's face. And these are the little things that happen, you know, Pro Mist filters, black Pro Mist filters. There's other types of filters too that can create effects. And this is what you see in Hollywood that oftentimes they don't tell you. So I have a screw-on one that goes on. Tiffin is a great company that I use. I have other filters as well. I have a neutral density filter that's basically like sunglasses for your camera. It's very important that you get that, especially when you're outside. Sometimes if you're inside and you don't want to go through to control the lighting, then a neutral and ND filter can help to control some of that. And as an example of this filter effect, I think of some friends that I did their engagement video. And it was really cool because certain scenes, if you will, really bloomed even more because of the filter that I used. And it was really cool because we were able to show this video at their wedding during the reception. It was amazing. Okay, when it comes to the camera, technology is getting better. I would say camera is important, don't get me wrong, but I would say technology is allowing it's kind of leveling the playing field. You don't have to spend a ton of money on your camera. I have an entry-level Canon M50. It's a mirrorless camera, and it works great. I use it for all my web streaming and so forth like that. Again, I'm on Zoom right now, and it's coming straight out of camera with nothing done in post or anything, and it works really well. I use it for some photography at times as well, but my other camera is what I use for all my documentary stuff and higher grade stuff, where It's a Blackmagic cinema camera Pocket 6K. And if you look at the full rig, it's definitely not something that fits in your pocket. But again, I'm using an entry-level camera to prove that for the most part, you can get a great image if you understand the other parts, lenses and lighting, and then the camera doesn't matter as much. A couple things that I would say are important is if you can get a camera that is film that allows you the capabilities of film in RAW. It allows you more flexibility in post. So RAW is huge. And then one little thing that I would say that saves you time too, and you don't have to do as much correcting, is to white balance your image. And I don't know that I did that. It's interesting. I don't know that I actually did that as I did this video, but whatever. Again, I just, this is just keeping it 100. Audio is very important. In fact, sometimes more important than your visual. And the reason why I say that is because if people can't hear you, they don't keep listening. They turn you off. And so what I have is I have a shotgun microphone that it literally is it focuses right and it grabs what's right in front of me, and it's on a boom stand. And I've had another microphone that clips onto my shirt or whatever, but this allows me more flexibility. I can, and it sounds really good, and I can move around, and I like that. But a really important aspect is the audio, and get a good microphone so people can hear you. I have a little adapter that it goes into before it goes into my camera, and so I can put some of those details in the description as well. And last but not least is editing. I wanted to keep this as 100 as possible without a ton of editing. I use a editing suite called DaVinci Resolve. Technically speaking, if you're going to upload to like YouTube allows you a way to do some of that editing, like if you want to take chunks of your video out. But I would definitely invest in a little bit of an editing suite. There's Premiere Pro, there's Final Cut Pro. I think a lot of people are starting to migrate to DaVinci Resolve because they have a free version. I have the paid version because I have one of their cameras, but I would totally recommend DaVinci Resolve. I took this summer last year to learn the basics of how it worked, and yeah, it took me like the summer. It's a very, very robust editing suite. It's what they use, many people use in Hollywood, so it's film grade, and it takes a lot of training. But honestly, a lot of the stuff that people need you can pick up decently quick. Again, YouTube, Google. That's what I did. Literally, I would spend so much time, when it came to YouTube videos, and then I would try it. And that's really the fun part. And I spent hours and hours and hours on lighting. I spent hours and hours on angles and all this stuff. And you just play with it. And over time, you'll make your space suitable for whatever image you're trying to create. The other thing I would say is it's been really cool to work with my colleagues. I do the marketing for our practice, and so I have certain videos that I've done that have gone really well, and it's interesting to see people are nervous, and then after they see the finished product, they're like, oh my goodness, this I wish, like, this is so cool. So again, it's something, anything when it's new, it feels really weird and overwhelming, but as time goes on, you get better at it. You really, really do. So let's do a little bit of a recap. Separate yourself from your background. That is number one. Create some space between you and your background. Make it interesting in how you light it. Make sure you have control in how you light it. Again, you have 3-point lighting, which is your key light. You want something big. You want something that has diffusion, so it softens it. Make sure it's at an angle. Make sure it's pointing down just a little bit. So again, it gives you this sort of natural looking, almost film look. You've got a hair light. Make sure you got barn doors on there so it controls it. Again, we've covered practical lighting. Then again, you have your lens. The lens is super important. The lens is what allows your image to be in focus and allows whatever you want to be blurry. So get a lens that allows that flexibility and has those capabilities. Get a filter on there if you can. Filters really help out, especially with creating a little bit more of a filmic look. I have an entry-level camera and I have a cinema grade camera, and the cinema grade camera is a little bit more entry level, but still it can do some pretty incredible imaging. raw, white balance. You want to make sure you invest in some good tech when it comes to how your audio is going to be incorporated into the mix. And then lastly, get yourself an editing suite, put a little bit of time into it. But there's ways that, you know, if you YouTube, there's different ways to be able to do editing and have it be a little bit easier. This by no means is meant to be comprehensive by any stretch. I'm just telling you guys, and I mean basics. There are so many more things, but I think most of us, if we could just kind of master some of the basics, we could have a better image, and maybe you wouldn't mind being stuck on a Zoom call for a little bit longer. Anyways, I hope this helps. I'll see you guys